He makes me feel like I'm finally living." Cristal's words hung in the air of our kitchen like smoke from a house fire. I stood there holding my coffee mug, watching my fiancée of 3 years deliver what she probably thought was some profound revelation about her soul's awakening. The morning light streaming through our bay window made her blonde hair look almost angelic, which seemed like a cosmic joke given what she'd just confessed. "Living," I repeated, setting down my mug with deliberate care. "That's interesting, Cristal, because I was under the impression you'd been alive this whole time." She had the decency to look uncomfortable, fidgeting with her engagement ring, the 2-carat diamond I'd saved 8 months to buy. "You know what I mean, Owen. With Tom, I feel different, electric, like I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed." Tom. Of course it was Tom Webb, her real estate partner with the artificially whitened teeth and the BMW he leased to impress clients. The same Tom who'd been coming to our barbecues for 2 years, shaking my hand while apparently planning to screw my fiancée. "How long?" I asked, my forensic accountant brain already cataloging assets and joint accounts. 6 months. She couldn't meet my eyes. "Owen, I didn't plan for this to happen. It just did, and I can't pretend anymore that what we have is enough." 6 months. Half a year of coming home to kiss me hello while tasting another man's lips. 6 months of working late and client dinners and girls' weekends that were apparently co-ed affairs. "Well then," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded, "I guess you should go live without me." Cristal blinked. This wasn't the script she'd prepared for. She'd probably expected tears, pleading, maybe some dramatic gesture to win her back. Instead, she got the same tone I used to discuss quarterly tax filings. "Owen, I don't want to hurt you. Too late for that consideration." I picked up my coffee again, noting my hand was perfectly steady. "But I appreciate the honesty. Finally." She stared at me like I'd started speaking Mandarin. "That's it? You're not going to fight for us?" "Fight for what exactly? Your divided attention, the privilege of sharing you with Tom, the joy of wondering which one of us you're thinking about when you're in bed?" I shook my head. "No thanks. I prefer my relationships like my accounting books, balanced and honest." The hurt that flashed across her face might have moved me a week ago. Today it felt like watching a stranger stub her toe. "I need to get ready for work," I said, heading toward the stairs. "I assume you'll want to pack your things. Take whatever you need. We'll figure out the rest later." "Owen, wait." I paused on the bottom step. Cristal, you just told me another man makes you feel alive. The logical conclusion is that I make you feel dead. So go live. I'm certainly not going to stop you." By the time I came downstairs, showered and dressed, she was gone. Her coffee cup sat abandoned on the counter, lipstick stain on the rim like a goodbye kiss I'd never wanted. I called my office and told them I'd be in late, then sat down at my laptop to begin what I did best, organizing numbers and making problems disappear. First, I logged into our joint checking account. $53,000 accumulated over 3 years of shared expenses and vacation savings. With a few keystrokes, I transferred my documented contributions to my personal account. Cristal's portion, roughly $18,000, stayed put. Let no one say I wasn't fair. Next, the house. We'd bought it together 2 years ago, but the down payment had come entirely from my inheritance after Dad died. The mortgage was in both names, but I'd made every payment from my account while Cristal saved up for furniture that never seemed to get purchased. A quick call to my lawyer confirmed what I already knew. I could buy out her half based on current market value, assuming she agreed. She'd agree. Cristal hated confrontation almost as much as she hated paperwork. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom, my best friend since college. "Still on for golf Saturday?" I stared at the message, wondering how to explain that my life had just imploded over breakfast. Instead, I typed back, "Absolutely. Need it more than ever." Another buzz, this one from Cristal. "Can we talk tonight? I think I explained this wrong." I deleted the message without responding. She'd explained it perfectly. She wanted to feel alive, and apparently I was a walking morguery. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 3 years, I'd been planning a life with someone who was just marking time until something better came along. All those conversations about wedding venues and honeymoon destinations, about kids' names and retirement dreams, she'd been going through the motions while I'd been building a future. My laptop chimed with an email notification. Cristal's travel agent, confirming our honeymoon booking to Santorini next month. 2 weeks in Greece, first-class flights, ocean view suite. $15,000 of carefully planned romance that would now be experienced by exactly no one. I called the travel agent. "Mr. Rourke, I was just about to call you. We have an issue with your booking." "What kind of issue?" "Well, it's a bit awkward. Your fiancé called yesterday asking about changing the reservation to include a third party. A Mr. Tom Webb? She said it was a surprise for you, but the math doesn't work. We can't add another person to a romantic suite package. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. She'd been planning to take him on our honeymoon that I'd paid for, to celebrate our marriage that was apparently just a formality she'd been dreading. Cancel it, I said. The whole trip? Sir, you'll forfeit the deposits. Cancel it all, today. But that's $15,000. I'm aware. Cancel it. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of what had been our kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum and the neighbor's dog bark. This morning, I'd been engaged to be married in 4 months. Now I was single, 15 grand poorer, and apparently so boring that my fiancé needed another man to feel human. The strangest part was how little I actually felt. No rage, no devastating heartbreak, just a cold clarity that reminded me why I'd chosen accounting. Numbers didn't lie. They didn't cheat. They didn't suddenly decide they needed to feel alive with someone else's numbers. My phone rang. Cristal. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Owen, please call me back. I know how this sounds, but it's not what you think. Tom and I? It's complicated. I love you. I do, but I love him too, and I thought maybe we could find a way to make this work for everyone. Call me. Make it work for everyone. She wanted to keep me as the stable provider while Tom supplied the excitement, a timeshare arrangement for her affections. I deleted the message and blocked her number. Then I called my real estate agent, not Cristal's firm, obviously, and put the house on the market. 3 days later, I had 2 offers on the house and a moving truck scheduled for the weekend. Cristal's belongings sat in boxes by the front door like abandoned luggage at an airport. She'd come by Tuesday while I was at work, taking her clothes and leaving everything else, including the engagement ring, which I found on the kitchen counter next to a note. Owen, I know you hate me right now, but I need you to understand that this isn't about not loving you. It's about loving myself enough to be honest about what I need. Tom makes me feel passionate and spontaneous in ways I've never experienced. I thought I could ignore those feelings, but I can't build a marriage on settling for good enough. I hope someday you'll forgive me. The ring is yours. I know how hard you worked to buy it. Love, Cristal. Love, Cristal. She signed it like a friendly letter to a distant relative. I'd taken the ring to a jeweler that afternoon. Market value, $4,800. I sold it on the spot and deposited the check in my vacation fund. If Cristal wanted to feel alive with Tom, she could do it without wearing my grandmother's diamond setting. The house sold Thursday morning to a young couple who reminded me painfully of Cristal and me 3 years ago, full of plans and certainty about their future. I accepted their offer immediately, even though it was $8,000 below asking price. I wanted out more than I wanted profit. My phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Cristal's friends probably wanting to play mediator or get the gossip firsthand. I'd changed my number Wednesday and given the new one to exactly 4 people: my boss, my lawyer, my real estate agent, and Tom. Tom had been surprisingly supportive when I'd explained the situation over beers Tuesday night. Jesus, Owen, 6 months? And she wants you to what? Share custody of her? Apparently. She seems to think love is some kind of renewable resource that expands to accommodate multiple users. What a bitch. I'd appreciated his loyalty, even if it felt somewhat hollow. Tom had never particularly liked Cristal. He told me once that she seemed like she was always auditioning for a better role. At the time, I'd thought he was being unfairly critical. Now it seemed like he'd been paying attention while I'd been balancing checkbooks. You know what the worst part is, I'd said, peeling the label off my beer bottle. I'm not even surprised. Deep down, I think I knew she was just killing time with me. Then why are you so calm about it? I'd be losing my shit. Good question. Why wasn't I devastated? 3 years of my life, gone. Wedding plans, canceled. Future children who would never exist. A woman I'd thought I loved, revealed to be someone I'd never actually known. Maybe because the numbers had never really added up. Cristal earned decent money selling houses, but she was always broke. She claimed to be saving for our future, but her savings account had exactly $400 in it when we'd applied for the mortgage. She talked about wanting kids, but had been on birth control the entire time we'd been together. She said she loved me, but had never seemed particularly interested in spending time with me unless we were doing something she wanted to do. I'd been dating a beautiful stranger who'd been polite enough to pretend we were building something together. The moving truck arrived Saturday morning. I'd rented a storage unit for most of the furniture and packed my personal belongings into my car and a small U-Haul trailer. 3 years of cohabitation reduced to what fit in a Honda Accord and a 6x8 box on wheels. Tom showed up to help, bringing coffee and donuts like we were having some kind of bizarre tailgate party. Where are you going to live? He asked, carrying a box of books to my car. Extended stay hotel until I figure it out. Maybe buy something smaller or rent. I haven't decided. You could crash at our place for a while. Jennifer wouldn't mind. I appreciated the offer, but the last thing I wanted was to be the pathetic divorced guy sleeping on his married friend's couch. Thanks, but I need some space to think. We worked in comfortable silence for an hour, dismantling the life I'd thought I was building. When we finished, the house looked like a crime scene. Empty rooms with rectangular shadows on the walls where pictures had hung, indentations in the carpet where furniture had sat. You sure about this? Tom asked as we stood in the empty living room. Selling the house, I mean, seems kind of extreme. Everything about this situation is extreme. Cristal didn't just cheat. She planned to take her boyfriend on our honeymoon. She wanted to keep me as some kind of backup plan while she explored her authentic self with Tom. You don't recover from that level of disrespect. Tom nodded slowly. Yeah, I guess not. Still seems fast, though. Fast is good. Fast doesn't leave time for second-guessing or false hope. Cristal made her choice. Now I'm making mine. My phone, the new one, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Owen, this is Jennifer. Tom told me what happened. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, please call. I showed Tom the message. Your wife's sweet, but I'm fine. Really. Are you, though? Because you're acting like someone who just canceled a subscription service, not someone whose fiancé cheated on him. Maybe that's exactly what it felt like. I'd been paying for a service I wasn't actually receiving, and when I'd discovered the fraud, I'd simply canceled my account. I'm processing it my own way, I said. Some people scream and throw things. I reorganize my assets and move on. If you say so, just don't disappear completely, okay? We're still friends, regardless of what Cristal did. I promised to stay in touch, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Tom and Jennifer were couple friends, the kind you had dinner parties with and went on double dates with. Without Cristal, I was just the odd number that made table arrangements awkward. After Tom left, I did a final walkthrough of the empty house. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, granite countertops, hardwood floors, the master bedroom where Cristal had presumably been thinking about Tom while lying next to me, the guest room we'd planned to convert into a nursery, the home office where I'd spent countless hours managing our finances while she'd been texting her lover. I locked the door and left the keys in the realtor's lockbox. Chapter closed. The extended stay hotel was exactly as depressing as expected. Beige walls, industrial carpet, the lingering smell of other people's microwave dinners, but it was clean and quiet and mine. No shared spaces, no compromises, no one to consider but myself. I unpacked my laptop and spent Saturday evening doing what I did best, making plans, new apartment search parameters, budget calculations, a list of belongings I'd need to replace, everything organized and quantified and under control. My old phone, which I'd kept to monitor Cristal's attempts at contact, had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I scrolled through them without reading, noting the progression from apologetic to angry to desperate. The last one, sent an hour ago, simply said, "Please." I turned the phone off and put it in a drawer. Cristal had wanted to feel alive. She was about to discover what that actually cost. Monday morning brought an interesting email to my work account. The sender was Linda Webb, Tom's wife, whom I'd met exactly twice at company parties. The subject line read, "We should talk." I stared at the message for a full minute before opening it. Owen, I hope you don't mind me contacting you at work. I got your email from the company directory. I know about Cristal and Tom. I've known for months. I think we should meet and discuss our mutual problem. Are you free for lunch today? Linda. Our mutual problem. I had to admire her directness. I replied, Lunch works. Noon at Romano's on 5th Street. Romano's was a small Italian place downtown, the kind of restaurant where you could have a private conversation without being overheard. I arrived early and claimed a corner booth, ordering coffee while I waited. Linda Webb was nothing like I'd expected. At the company parties, she'd seemed like a typical corporate wife, perfectly styled, pleasantly vapid, content to smile and nod while the men discussed business. The woman who slid into the booth across from me was sharp-eyed and purposeful, with the bearing of someone who'd been planning this conversation for a while. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, declining the menu the waitress offered. "I wasn't sure you'd respond." "To be honest, I'm curious. You said you've known for months?" "Since February. Tom started working late every Tuesday and Thursday. He claimed it was inventory management, but when I called the office one evening, the security guard said the building was empty." She smiled without warmth. "I hired a private investigator." A private investigator. While I'd been trusting my fiancé's explanations about client dinners, Linda had been gathering evidence. Why didn't you confront them? Because I wanted to know the full scope of what I was dealing with. Tom has cheated before, twice that I know of, but those were brief affairs with women who meant nothing to him. Cristal is different. The waitress returned for our order. Linda requested a salad. I ordered pasta I probably wouldn't eat. When we were alone again, she continued. He's been talking about leaving me. Not directly, but he's been asking questions about asset division, prenuptials, custody arrangements. He thinks he's being subtle. Are you here to warn me, or do you want something? Both. Linda opened her purse and withdrew a manila folder. I want to show you something. Inside were photographs. Tom and Cristal entering and leaving hotels, embracing in restaurant parking lots, kissing in the front seat of his BMW. But it was the last photo that made me set down my coffee cup. Cristal and Tom standing outside a jewelry store, examining what was clearly an engagement ring in a small blue box. When was this taken? Last Thursday, the same day you put your house on the market, according to public records. Thursday. 3 days after Cristal had left me the note about loving herself enough to be honest. She'd been ring shopping with Tom while I was selling our home. I take it Tom hasn't mentioned divorce proceedings to you yet, I said. Not yet, but he will. Probably as soon as Cristal finalizes whatever arrangements she needs to make. Linda leaned forward. Owen, they're not just having an affair. They're planning a life together, and they're planning to finance it with our assets. She was right, of course. Cristal had been perfectly happy to let me handle all the financial responsibilities while she saved money that apparently went toward hotel rooms and jewelry for her actual relationship. And Tom, if he was anything like Cristal, had probably been using marital assets to fund his double life. What do you want from me? I want them to face consequences. Real ones. Not just the inconvenience of having to find new apartments and explain themselves to friends. Linda's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. I want them to understand that actions have costs. I'm not interested in revenge, Linda. I just want to move on. Is that why you sold your house in 3 days, canceled your honeymoon, changed your phone number? She smiled. You're already taking action, Owen. I'm just suggesting we coordinate our efforts. The pasta arrived, giving me time to think. Linda was offering an alliance, but alliances required trust, and I'd recently learned the dangers of trusting people with hidden agendas. What kind of coordination are you talking about? Information sharing, strategic planning, making sure they can't manipulate the narrative or hide assets. She picked at her salad. Tom has been transferring money to accounts I don't have access to. Small amounts, but consistent. I think he's been building a nest egg for his new life. That's financial fraud if you're in a community property state. We are, and I have documentation. Linda's smile was sharp. I also have evidence of him using company resources for personal business, hotel reservations made through his corporate account, business dinners that were actually dates with Cristal, mileage reimbursements for trips that had nothing to do with work. Tom was stealing from his own company to finance his affair. It was almost impressively stupid. Have you told his employer? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Linda set down her fork. Owen, I know this is a lot to process. Your fiancé just left you, and now I'm suggesting we work together to expose their lies. But they're counting on us being too hurt or too proud to compare notes. They want us to suffer in silence while they ride off into the sunset with our money and our dignity. She wasn't wrong. Cristal's note had been carefully crafted to make me feel like the problem, like my failure to make her feel alive had driven her into Tom's arms. It was manipulation disguised as honesty. What do you propose? Linda reached into her folder again and withdrew a business card. My private investigator. He's very thorough and very discreet. He's already compiled extensive documentation of their affair, but there's more to uncover. Financial irregularities, professional misconduct, maybe even tax implications. Tax implications. Now she was speaking my language. I'll think about it, I said. Don't think too long. Tom is getting bolder. Last week he told me he was attending a real estate conference in Chicago. Cristal posted pictures from the same hotel on her Instagram account. Linda stood and left money for her untouched salad. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. That means they're close to making their move. After she left, I sat in the booth finishing my pasta and thinking about chess. Cristal and Tom were playing a game where they thought they controlled all the pieces. They'd calculated the emotional cost of their betrayal but ignored the practical consequences. They'd focused on the romance of their forbidden love without considering the logistics of their deception. They'd forgotten they were playing against people who understood numbers. I pulled out my phone and called the private investigator. David Chen, the private investigator, had an office that looked like it belonged to a tax attorney. filing cabinets, computer monitors, and the kind of organized efficiency that suggested he took his work seriously. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the focused intensity of someone who'd found his calling in other people's secrets. Linda Webb gave me the basics, he said, opening a file folder that was considerably thicker than I'd anticipated. But I always like to hear the client's perspective. Tell me about Cristal. I gave him the abbreviated version. 3 years together, engagement, the confession, her sudden departure. He took notes without judgment, occasionally asking for clarification on dates or details. When did you first suspect something was wrong? I didn't. That's the problem. The admission stung more than I'd expected. Looking back, there were signs. She was always tired when she got home from work, but energetic when she was going out. She stopped talking about wedding plans unless I brought them up. She became protective of her phone. Classic indicators. What about financial irregularities? That's where it gets interesting. I'd spent the weekend reviewing 3 years of bank statements and credit card bills. Cristal claimed to be saving money for our future, but her savings account never grew. She said she was being careful with spending, but she had unexplained cash withdrawals every week. How much? $200 to $300, usually on Tuesdays or Thursdays, always from ATMs near her office. The same days, Linda had mentioned Tom working late. I assumed it was for groceries or gas, but we have joint credit cards for those expenses. David made another note. Cash is harder to trace. Smart if you're trying to hide expenditures. What about travel? She took 3 girls' weekends in the past 6 months, claimed they were spa trips with her sister. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos Cristal had posted. But look at the backgrounds. David studied the images. Cristal at what appeared to be a mountain resort, Cristal by a lake, Cristal at a winery. All beautiful locations, all places that seemed more romantic than therapeutic. Did you verify these trips with her sister? I never thought to, but her sister lives in Phoenix and works 60 hours a week as a nurse. I doubt she's taking spa weekends in Colorado. We'll check. What else? I told him about the honeymoon reservation, how Cristal had tried to add Tom as a third party, about the engagement ring I'd found them shopping for, about the note she'd left, with its careful phrasing about loving herself enough to be honest. She's been planning this for months, David said. The question is what she's been planning. Exactly? Is this just an affair that got out of hand or something more calculated? What do you mean? Well, think about the timeline. She starts the affair in February. By July, she's trying to modify your honeymoon reservation. By August, she's ring shopping with Tom. But she doesn't tell you about the relationship until September, and only after you discover evidence. He tapped his pen against the desk. That's not someone who's conflicted about her feelings. That's someone who's been orchestrating a transition. A transition. From me to Tom, from our life to their life, from my financial stability to whatever Tom could provide. Linda mentioned that Tom has been moving money around. Substantial amounts. Small transfers to avoid triggering automatic reporting, but consistent over the past 6 months. He's also been using company resources for personal expenses, hotel rooms, restaurant bills, even jewelry purchases charged to his corporate account. David opened another folder. His employer would be very interested in this information. What kind of employer? Regional development firm. They handle commercial real estate deals, shopping centers, office complexes. Tom is a senior project manager, which gives him access to significant expense accounts and client entertainment budgets. I was beginning to understand the scope of what Cristal and Tom had been doing. It wasn't just an affair, it was a systematic fraud designed to fund their relationship while maintaining their existing lifestyles. There's something else, David said. I've been monitoring their communications, legally through public social media and professional networks. They've been more careless lately. Look at this. He showed me a series of Instagram posts from Cristal's account. Photos of expensive dinners, designer clothes, weekend trips, all posted during times when she'd claimed to be working late or visiting family. The dates corresponded exactly with Tom's suspicious expense reports. She's documenting their fraud, I said. Inadvertently, yes, but there's more. David pulled up Tom's LinkedIn profile. He's been networking aggressively with companies in other states, Phoenix, Denver, Austin, all places with strong real estate markets. He's looking for a new job. And Cristal's been researching real estate licenses in those same states. I found her browsing history through a mutual connection at her firm. David leaned back in his chair. They're not just planning to leave their spouses, they're planning to leave town. The full picture was starting to emerge. Cristal and Tom had been using our money and his company's money to finance a trial run of their relationship. The weekend trips, the expensive dinners, the jewelry, it was all a test to see if they were compatible as a couple. And now that they'd decided they were preparing to disappear together, leaving Linda and me to deal with the financial and emotional wreckage. How long before they make their move? Based on the pattern of activity, I'd say within the next month. Tom has been accelerating his job search, and Cristal just listed her condo, the one she kept when you moved in together. Cristal's condo? I'd forgotten she still owned it. She'd been renting it out for the past 2 years, claiming the income was going toward our wedding fund. Another lie, apparently. What do you recommend? Document everything. Freeze joint accounts. Secure your assets. David handed me a business card. I also recommend you contact this attorney. She specializes in cases involving financial fraud and asset recovery. I'm not looking for revenge, David. I just want to protect myself. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice. His expression was serious. Cristal and Tom have been committing multiple crimes: fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. They've stolen from you, from his company, and from the government. If you don't take action, they'll do it to other people. He was right. Cristal's confession hadn't been an honest moment of self-discovery. It had been the opening move in a carefully planned exit strategy. She'd expected me to be devastated and confused, too hurt to think clearly about practical matters. She'd counted on my love for her to blind me to what she'd actually been doing, but I wasn't devastated. I was angry, and anger, I was discovering, was much more useful than heartbreak. Send me everything you have, I said. Financial records, photographs, communications logs. I want to understand exactly what they've been doing. What about Linda? She's been very helpful with information sharing. Keep working with her, but I want my own copies of everything. I stood to leave, then paused. David, how long have you been doing this? 8 years. Why? In your experience, do people like Cristal and Tom ever face real consequences for what they do? David smiled, and for the first time since I'd entered his office, he looked genuinely pleased. Owen, people like Cristal and Tom get away with it because their victims are usually too hurt or too embarrassed to fight back. But you're not most people, are you? No, I said. I'm really not. The attorney David recommended, Patricia Huang, had the kind of office that suggested she won more cases than she lost. Expensive furniture, law school diplomas from prestigious universities, and a view of the city that probably cost more per month than most people's mortgages. She reviewed David's files with the focused attention of someone who'd seen this kind of case before. This is extensive, she said, turning pages of financial records and photographs. Your fiancée and her partner have been remarkably careless about documentation. Is it enough for criminal charges? Potentially. The embezzlement from Tom's company is clear-cut. Using corporate accounts for personal expenses is theft, regardless of his position. The tax implications are more complex, but if they've been underreporting income or claiming fraudulent deductions, the IRS will be interested. Patricia closed the folder. What outcome are you looking for? I want them to face consequences, real ones. Criminal prosecution is possible, but it's also unpredictable. Prosecutors might offer plea deals, especially for first-time offenders. Civil action is more reliable. We can recover damages, secure asset freezes, and ensure they can't profit from their fraud. Both? Both is expensive and time-consuming. Are you prepared for that level of commitment? I thought about Cristal's note, about her careful phrasing designed to make me feel like the problem in our relationship, about the honeymoon reservation she'd tried to modify, about the engagement ring she'd been shopping for while I was selling our house. Yes. Then we'll start with asset protection and civil action. Once we have those in place, we can discuss criminal referrals. Patricia opened her calendar. I'll need complete financial records for the past 3 years, bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, everything. Can you provide those? I can have them to you by tomorrow. Excellent. I'll also need you to sign some documents authorizing me to contact financial institutions and credit agencies. We want to freeze any joint accounts and prevent unauthorized access to your assets. The paperwork took an hour. When we finished, Patricia walked me to her office door. Owen, I want to manage your expectations. This process will take months, possibly years. Cristal and Tom will hire their own attorneys, and they'll fight every step. Are you prepared for that? They've been planning this for 6 months while lying to my face every day. I think I can handle a legal battle. Good. One more thing. Avoid direct contact with either of them. Don't respond to calls, texts, or emails. Let everything go through me. People in their situation sometimes become desperate, and desperate people make poor decisions. As if on cue, my old phone buzzed in my pocket. Cristal, still trying to reach me. I'd been monitoring her attempts at contact without responding, watching the progression from apologetic to frustrated to increasingly frantic. Her latest messages had taken on an edge of panic that suggested she was beginning to understand the scope of my response to her confession. I drove home to my hotel room and spent the evening organizing 3 years of financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts, tax returns, everything Patricia had requested. It was tedious work, but it revealed patterns I'd been too trusting to notice before. Cristal's mysterious cash withdrawals corresponded exactly with Tom's expense reports. Her spa weekends aligned with his out-of-town business trips. Even her shopping habits had changed. She'd started buying expensive clothes and accessories right around the time their affair began, but always with cash, never with our joint credit cards. My phone rang. Tom. Hey, how are you holding up? Better than expected. Staying busy? Jennifer wanted me to invite you to dinner this weekend. She's worried about you living in that hotel. I appreciated their concern, but the last thing I wanted was to spend an evening discussing my failed relationship over pot roast and pity. Thanks, but I'm not really up for socializing yet. Come on, Owen. You can't hide in that hotel room forever. Besides, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. Something in his tone made me pay attention. What kind of something? Not over the phone. Can you meet me for drinks tomorrow night? Murphy's Tavern, around 7? Murphy's was our usual spot, a dive bar near downtown where we'd been meeting for drinks since college. Tom sounded serious, which was unusual for him. Sure, is everything okay? Yeah, it's just, I'll explain tomorrow. After Tom hung up, I returned to my financial analysis. There was something satisfying about reducing Cristal's betrayal to numbers and dates, transforming emotional devastation into data points that could be quantified and addressed. My old phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Cristal. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message. Owen, this is Tom Webb. I think we should talk. Man to man. I know Cristal told you about us, and I want you to know that neither of us intended for this to happen. We're adults, and we should be able to handle this situation like adults. Call me back. Man to man. Adults. Tom wanted to have a conversation about stealing my fiancée like we were negotiating a business deal. I deleted the message without responding. Patricia had been right about avoiding direct contact. Anything I said to Tom could be used against me later. Better to let him wonder why I wasn't playing along with his script. But his message revealed something important. He wasn't worried about me causing problems for him and Cristal. He was treating this like a minor inconvenience that could be resolved with a reasonable conversation between gentlemen. Tom had no idea what was coming. I spent the rest of the evening researching his company, Web Development Group. Regional firm, solid reputation, several high-profile projects in the past 5 years. Tom was listed as a senior project manager with an MBA from a respectable state university. His LinkedIn profile showed a progression of increasingly responsible positions with glowing recommendations from colleagues and clients, all of which would make his embezzlement scandal much more damaging when it became public. The next evening, I arrived at Murphy's to find Tom already seated at our usual table, nursing a beer and looking uncomfortable. He stood when he saw me, but his greeting was subdued. Thanks for coming. What's this about, Tom? He waited until I'd ordered a drink before answering. It's about Cristal and Tom. My stomach tightened. What about them? Jennifer's been talking to some of the wives from your old neighborhood. Apparently, Cristal's been telling people that you two are just taking a break, that you needed some space to work through your issues, but that she's confident you'll get back together. She's what? She's been showing up at social events like nothing happened. Jennifer saw her at book club last week, talking about wedding plans like they were just postponed, not canceled. Cristal was rewriting the narrative. Instead of admitting she'd cheated and destroyed our relationship, she was portraying our breakup as a temporary separation that I'd initiated. There's more, Tom said. She's been asking about you, where you're living, whether you're dating anyone, if you've seemed depressed or angry. Jennifer thinks she's trying to figure out your state of mind. Why would she care? Tom looked even more uncomfortable. Owen, I think she's planning to come back. Jennifer thinks Cristal realized she made a mistake and wants to reconcile. The idea was so absurd, I almost laughed. Cristal had spent 6 months planning her exit from our relationship, had tried to take Tom on our honeymoon, had been shopping for engagement rings with him while I was selling our house. Now she wanted to reconcile? What exactly has she been saying? That you overreacted to her confession about having feelings for someone else, that she never said she wanted to break up, just that she needed to explore her emotions, that she's been giving you space to calm down, but she's ready to work things out. Feelings for someone else. Cristal was describing a 6-month affair as having feelings for Tom, like she'd developed a harmless crush on a movie star. Tom, she moved out. She took her belongings and left me a note saying she couldn't build a marriage on settling for good enough. She tried to add Tom to our honeymoon reservation. I know what you told me, but that's not the story she's telling everyone else. Of course it wasn't. Cristal was a real estate agent. She understood the importance of controlling the narrative. If she could convince our mutual friends that I'd overreacted to a minor emotional crisis, she could position herself as the reasonable party trying to save our relationship. Why are you telling me this? Because Jennifer thinks you should know what she's saying. And because... Tom hesitated. Because Cristal called me yesterday. She what? She wanted to know if you'd talked to me about getting back together. She said she'd been trying to reach you, but your number was disconnected. She seemed to think I might be able to help facilitate a conversation. Cristal was using Tom as a back channel to reach me. She'd probably calculated that my best friend would want to see me happy and might be willing to play mediator. What did you tell her? That you seemed to be moving on and that she should respect your decision to end the relationship? Tom leaned forward. Owen, she didn't seem to believe that you actually wanted to break up. She kept saying that you two had been together for 3 years, that you'd been planning a wedding, that people don't just throw that away over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. Cristal's affair had been downgraded from a betrayal to a simple miscommunication. She's going to try to contact you directly, Tom continued. Jennifer heard her telling someone that she knows where you work and that if you won't take her calls, she'll find another way to talk to you. I thanked Tom for the warning and finished my drink quickly. Cristal's attempts at reconciliation weren't romantic gestures. They were damage control. She'd probably realized that Tom wasn't as financially stable as she'd assumed, or that leaving town with him would be more complicated than she'd anticipated. Maybe his wife had confronted him, or his employer had started asking questions about his expense reports. Whatever the reason, Cristal wanted to keep me as a backup plan while she figured out her next move, but I wasn't interested in being anyone's safety net. Cristal had made her choice 6 months ago when she'd started her affair with Tom. Everything since then had just been logistics. It was time to accelerate my own timeline. Patricia's call came Friday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports at work. We have a problem, she said. Cristal's hired an attorney. That was inevitable. Yes, but she's also filed a motion claiming you've stolen marital assets. She's asking for an emergency hearing to freeze your accounts and force you to return property she claims belongs to both of you. I set down my coffee. What property? The proceeds from the house sale, your personal bank accounts, even your car. She's claiming that your decision to sell the house and liquidate joint assets was done without her consent and constitutes financial abuse. Financial abuse? Cristal was accusing me of the exact thing she'd been doing for 6 months. Can she do that? She can try. The good news is that we have documentation showing all the assets were legally yours to dispose of. The bad news is that family court judges sometimes err on the side of caution when one party claims financial hardship. What's our next move? We accelerate everything. I'm filing our own motion today with all the evidence David compiled. We're going to request an emergency hearing based on Cristal's fraudulent use of marital assets and her systematic deception about the affair. How long do we have? Her hearing is scheduled for Monday. Ours will probably be Tuesday or Wednesday. Patricia's voice was crisp and professional. Owen, I need you to understand something. Cristal's attorney is going to paint you as a vindictive ex-fiancée who's trying to punish her for being honest about her feelings. They're going to claim that your response was disproportionate and financially abusive. Let them try. They will, and they're going to have Cristal testify about how much she loves you, how she never wanted to end the relationship, how she was just confused about her emotions. It's going to be a performance designed to make you look like the villain. Good thing we have evidence. Evidence helps, but family court isn't criminal court. Judges sometimes prioritize emotional appeals over facts. Patricia paused. There's something else. David's been monitoring Cristal's communications, and she's been in contact with several of your mutual friends. She's building a narrative about your mental state, claiming you've been acting erratically and vindictively. Tom's warning about Cristal's version of events was just the beginning. She was systematically contacting everyone we knew, positioning herself as the victim of my unreasonable response to her honest confession. What kind of narrative? That you've become obsessed with punishing her. That you sold the house and canceled the wedding out of spite, not hurt. That you've been refusing to communicate with her because you want to cause her maximum emotional damage. Patricia's tone was carefully neutral. Owen, she's going to claim that your behavior constitutes harassment and emotional abuse. The irony was breathtaking. Cristal had spent 6 months lying to me, stealing from me, and planning to abandon me, but I was the abuser because I'd refused to participate in her reconciliation fantasy. What do? We stick to the facts: financial records, documented deception, evidence of her systematic fraud. We let the evidence speak for itself. Patricia paused again. But Owen, you need to be prepared for the possibility that some people will believe her version of events. Cristal's an attractive woman who's claiming to be the victim of a controlling man. That narrative resonates with people, even when it's false. After Patricia hung up, I sat in my office thinking about chess again. Cristal had been playing a long game, but she'd made a crucial error. She'd assumed I would react emotionally instead of strategically. She'd expected me to be devastated and confused, not methodical and prepared. But now she was adapting, shifting from offense to defense, trying to reframe her betrayal as my overreaction. It was actually a smart move, if you ignored the mountain of evidence against her. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Owen, please call me. We need to talk before this gets out of hand. I know you're hurt, but I never wanted things to end this way. Cristal. She'd gotten a new phone to circumvent my blocking her number. The message was carefully crafted. Apologetic, but not admitting fault. Loving, but not desperate. She was still trying to control the narrative. I forwarded the message to Patricia and David, then blocked the new number. An hour later, my work phone rang. The receptionist said I had a visitor. Cristal was in the lobby, asking to see me. Tell her I'm not available, I said. She says it's urgent. Something about a family emergency. A family emergency? Cristal was escalating her attempts at contact, using increasingly dramatic justifications. Next would come claims that she was in danger, or sick, or that something had happened to a mutual friend. Tell her to contact my attorney if she needs to reach me. She says she doesn't have an attorney, she just wants to talk. Of course she was lying about having an attorney. Cristal was trying to appear vulnerable and reasonable, the concerned ex-fiancé who just wanted to have an honest conversation. Ma'am, please tell her that I'm not available and that all communication needs to go through my legal counsel. 20 minutes later, my desk phone rang. Cristal had somehow gotten my direct number. Owen, please don't hang up. I know you're angry, but we need to talk before this situation gets completely out of control. Cristal, you need to contact my attorney. I'm not discussing anything with you directly. Your attorney? Owen, what attorney? We're not married. We don't need lawyers to have a conversation. She was still pretending she hadn't hired legal counsel, still trying to position herself as the reasonable party. Goodbye, Cristal. Wait. Owen, I know about the private investigator. I know about the financial records and the photographs. But you don't understand what really happened. Tom and I... It's not what you think. I hung up. Within minutes, my phone rang again. This time, it was David. Cristal just left your office building. She's been calling my office all morning, claiming there's been a misunderstanding about the scope of my investigation. What kind of misunderstanding? She wants to know exactly what evidence we have. She's claiming that she and Tom were never actually having an affair, that they were just friends who got caught up in an emotional situation. Friends don't shop for engagement rings together. No, they don't. But Cristal's attorney is apparently going to claim that the ring shopping was for Tom's wife, that Cristal was helping him pick out an anniversary gift. The audacity was stunning. Cristal was going to claim that all the evidence of her affair was actually evidence of her helping Tom be a better husband. What about the hotel rooms, the weekend trips? Business meetings and coincidental travel schedules. Cristal is going to testify that she and Tom never had a physical relationship, that they were just close friends who developed feelings for each other but never acted on them. And the financial records? Legitimate business expenses and personal financial management. Cristal's going to claim that her cash withdrawals were for a surprise savings account she was building for your wedding. Cristal's defense strategy was becoming clear. She was going to admit to having feelings for Tom while denying any actual affair. She would claim that her confession to me had been about emotional confusion, not physical betrayal. And she would position my response as the overreaction of a controlling, paranoid man who'd destroyed their relationship over his own insecurities. It was actually brilliant, if you could ignore the photographs and financial records and documented lies. David, how solid is our evidence? Solid enough for civil court. The financial fraud is well documented and the pattern of deception is clear, but Cristal's attorney is going to argue that emotional affairs aren't crimes, and that your response was disproportionate to her actual behavior. What about Tom? Is he sticking to the same story? Tom isn't talking. His attorney has advised him to avoid any contact with you, Cristal, or anyone connected to this situation. He's focusing on his own legal problems. His employer is conducting an internal investigation of his expense reports. Tom was cutting his losses, distancing himself from Cristal to protect his career and marriage, which meant Cristal was facing the consequences of their affair alone. David, I want you to accelerate the investigation. Financial records, communications, travel documentation, everything. If Cristal wants to claim this was just an emotional friendship, let's see how well that story holds up under scrutiny. Already on it. I'll have a complete report by Monday morning. After David hung up, I sat in my office thinking about Cristal's desperation. She'd gone from confident manipulation to frantic damage control in less than a week. Her carefully planned exit strategy had collapsed, leaving her scrambling to salvage what she could from the wreckage. But it was too late for damage control. Cristal had made her choice 6 months ago when she'd decided to build a secret life with Tom. Everything since then had just been the natural consequences of that decision. My phone buzzed with another text from a different unknown number. Owen, this is getting ridiculous. I made a mistake, but you're destroying both our lives over it. Can't we work this out like adults? Cristal. I forwarded the message to Patricia and blocked the number. Cristal wanted to work things out like adults. But adults didn't spend 6 months lying to their partners while planning to abandon them. Adults didn't try to modify honeymoon reservations to include their lovers. Adults didn't hire private investigators to spy on their ex-fiancés while simultaneously claiming to want reconciliation. Cristal had forfeited her right to be treated like an adult when she'd decided to treat me like a fool. Monday morning would bring her emergency hearing, where she would perform her role as the confused woman who'd been punished for her honesty. She would cry, she would apologize, she would claim that she'd never wanted to hurt me, and then Patricia would present our evidence, and Cristal would discover what adults actually do when they have been systematically betrayed and defrauded. The game was almost over, and for the first time since this started, I was looking forward to seeing how it ended. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Cristal sat at a table across the aisle with her attorney, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who kept checking his phone. She was dressed conservatively, navy dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. The picture of a reasonable woman who'd been wronged by a vindictive ex-fiancé. She looked beautiful, which had probably been calculated. Cristal understood the power of appearances. Patricia sat beside me, organizing files with the efficiency of someone who'd done this many times before. Remember, she said quietly, don't react to anything Cristal says. No matter how outrageous or false, maintain neutral expression. The judge will be watching both of you. Cristal's attorney stood first. Your Honor, my client is here today because her ex-fiancé has engaged in a pattern of financial abuse and harassment that has left her unable to access funds she needs for basic living expenses. He painted a picture of Cristal as the victim of my controlling behavior, how I'd unilaterally sold our house, emptied joint accounts, and refused all attempts at reasonable communication. He described her confession about having feelings for Tom as an honest attempt to work through relationship problems, and my response as vindictive and disproportionate. Ms. Rourke never intended to end their relationship, he continued. She was trying to be honest about her emotional confusion, hoping they could work through it together. Instead, Mr. Rourke responded by systematically destroying their shared life and attempting to leave her financially destitute. Cristal took the stand and delivered exactly the performance I'd expected. Tears at appropriate moments, voice breaking when she described how much she loved me, confusion about why I'd reacted so extremely to her honest confession. I never said I wanted to break up, she testified. I told Owen that I'd developed feelings for someone else, but that I wanted to work through it with him. I thought we could go to counseling, maybe take some time to reconnect. I never imagined he would interpret my honesty as a reason to end our entire relationship. She was good. If I hadn't lived through the actual events, I might have believed her version. Cristal's attorney introduced her as evidence, bank statements showing her nearly empty accounts, documentation of the house sale that she claimed was done without her knowledge, proof that I'd canceled our honeymoon and changed my phone number. Your Honor, Mr. Rourke's actions constitute financial abuse. He's used his superior financial knowledge to systematically deprive my client of access to marital assets, leaving her unable to afford basic necessities while he lives comfortably in an extended stay hotel. When Patricia stood for cross-examination, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Ms. Rourke, you testified that you never intended to end your relationship with Mr. Rourke. Is that correct? Yes, that's correct. And you claim that your confession was about emotional confusion, not a physical affair? Yes. I developed feelings for Tom, but I never acted on them. Patricia opened her first folder. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit A, hotel receipts showing Ms. Rourke and Tom Webb registered at the Riverside Inn on 6 separate occasions between March and August. Cristal's face went pale, but her attorney objected. Your Honor, these receipts don't prove anything inappropriate occurred. Sustained, but I'll allow them into evidence. Patricia continued methodically through the evidence. Photographs of Cristal and Tom together, financial records showing her cash withdrawals corresponding to their meetings, documentation of the engagement ring shopping trip. Ms. Rourke, can you explain why you were shopping for engagement rings with Mr. Webb if you were committed to working things out with Mr. Rourke? I was helping Tom pick out an anniversary gift for his wife. An anniversary gift that cost $18,000 and was sized for your ring finger? Cristal's attorney objected again, but the damage was done. Her explanation sounded absurd, even to her. Patricia introduced the honeymoon reservation modification, the travel records showing Cristal and Tom in the same cities on the same dates, the communications between Cristal and various travel agents about relocating to other states. Ms. Rourke, if you were committed to saving your relationship with Mr. Rourke, why were you researching real estate licenses in Phoenix, Denver, and Austin? I was exploring career opportunities. Career opportunities that coincidentally matched Mr. Webb's job search in those same cities? By the time Patricia finished, Cristal's story had been systematically dismantled. Her attorney tried to redirect, focusing on my allegedly vindictive response to her confession, but the evidence spoke for itself. When it was over, the judge took exactly 10 minutes to render his decision. Ms. Rourke's petition is denied. The evidence clearly shows that Mr. Rourke's disposal of assets was legally justified and that Ms. Rourke's claims of financial abuse are without merit. Furthermore, the court finds that Ms. Rourke's testimony was not credible and that her characterization of events was deliberately misleading. Cristal's face crumpled. Her attorney whispered something in her ear, but she shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. The judge wasn't finished. The court is also referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation of potential perjury charges. Ms. Rourke's testimony appears to have been deliberately false in several material respects. Perjury charges. Cristal had lied under oath, and now she was facing criminal prosecution. As we left the courtroom, Cristal tried to approach me, but Patricia stepped between us. All communication goes through counsel, she said firmly. Owen, please, Cristal called out. This has gone too far. I never meant for any of this to happen. I didn't respond. Cristal had been given multiple opportunities to tell the truth, and she'd chosen deception every time. The consequences were her own doing. Outside the courthouse, Patricia was already planning our next moves. We'll file the civil suit this week. With today's ruling, we have a strong foundation for recovering damages and legal fees. She smiled. Cristal's attorney will probably recommend she settle rather than face additional litigation. What about Tom? His situation is more complicated. His employer fired him this morning. Apparently, the internal investigation confirmed significant misuse of company funds. His wife has filed for divorce, and she's seeking full custody of their children. Tom had lost his job, his marriage, and his children. Cristal had lost her credibility, her financial security, and potentially her freedom if the perjury charges stuck. How do you feel? Patricia asked as we reached our cars. It was a good question. 3 months ago, I'd been planning a wedding and a future with someone I'd thought I loved. Today, I'd watched that same person perjure herself in court while trying to steal money she'd already helped embezzle. Relieved, I said, and realized I meant it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Owen, I know you hate me right now, but I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Everything I did was because I was confused and scared. I made terrible mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. Please don't let this destroy both our lives. Cristal. I showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head. Patricia warned Cristal would keep contacting me for months. That night, I reviewed job offers: Chicago, Seattle, Denver. Denver appealed most. Mountains, fresh start, no ghosts. Cristal texted from new numbers, desperate after Tom lost everything. I blocked each one. Linda called days later. Favorable settlement, full custody secured. Cristal had contacted her asking if Tom was reconciling. He wasn't. Tom called as I packed. Isn't this running away? Sometimes running away is smartest, I replied. Driving west, Cristal's final text arrived. Begging, broken, alone. I responded once. You didn't lose everything. You traded it. Blocked, Denver bound. Mountains ahead, wreckage behind.